So yesterday I told a little bit about this one person experience, how this skin back ended up to practice Zen, but we didn't get that far yesterday, so maybe I will wrap up, not wrap up, but continue. So yes, there was this question which I didn't ask anymore, and now I was living in Kangasala, some 15 minutes from Tampere by car, and I work in Tampere theater, but since I also had a lot of free time, which I spent being just by myself in the house, empty house, or just like I alone was living there. And it was a cold winter, so I spent a lot of time indoors also, but maybe I even did skiing. Skiing, yes. Anyway, spending days and hours by oneself, it works. I wasn't looking for anything, like I was actually writing poems and feeling a little bit like this kind of, what is the right word, sort of an artist person, like kind of romantic figure, I must tell you. It was I was 19 and having that in my mind, that I'm sort of an artist, like a wrongly understood, and maybe I was wearing this barret or whatever. But yes, also this notion suddenly appeared. Like I was standing there and wondering, whose body is this? And anyway, who is standing here? Who is this? Who is this thing? And I had no idea. And I wrote more poems. Some of them were quite bad. But at some point something happened, and I think, I don't know if there is such a thing, but I would say that I went into this kind of spontaneous samadhi-like something state a little bit. There was this, because I didn't talk to anyone and I was alone and I was just, and it's a cold also there, and I think I went a little bit of that kind of state. Because suddenly I was more aware of just being there, and it was really feeling this beingness there. And that weekend, there was weekend coming, and my father was coming to pick me up and take me to Helsinki area where we lived, or Vantaa, if we are precise. But before he arrived, maybe it was next day or something when he arrived, but I just I can't remember well, but I went through many kinds of emotions and thoughts about life and such. And I picked it up one book also from the bookshelf, and it was the upper shelf, like 2 meter high. It was very, very close to the ceiling, and then I don't know why I picked it up, just that book, but because probably I couldn't even see clearly what was the book. But anyway, I took it and I gave it a try, and it was one of the Krishnamurti's book. And I don't think anyone in our family ever read it, but I now started to go through. It was a book that my father got as a kind of a present, that if he wants to make a review, but he didn't. But anyway, I read it, some of them, and it just was like, a box and lid, and it was so perfectly fitting. And if you know anything about his style, I have tried it afterwards, but I don't know, it doesn't. Yeah, but then it was very straightforward and like just pointing, no complications, and I guess that also made some impact, or it forced it. Make it more stronger what already was going on. It kind of convinced me, or something like that. And when my father arrived, I already had that kind of it was a strange thing to even think about now or to tell, but for some reason I was quite pleased how I was, so kind of being alive and knowing that was the thing, that I knew I was alive, and it felt very good. I was just alive. And then I told my father that I actually could give my life away, which sounds very strange now to tell that, why anyone would tell his father. But of course I probably said many other things, but that has something to do with today's talk. And because that was a very naive feeling, I just felt that way. I was so happy that I was alive, and then I thought, and I told him that it doesn't matter if I live 100 years or one day, or it doesn't change this fact that I'm alive. And then back then I thought that it won't change anything. Either I live longer or shorter, but life is life, and life is great. But for some reason I also thought that if someone doesn't know that, if there is somebody who doesn't know, I would gladly give my life to this person. And it sounds quite great to say those big words, but I don't know, it just felt that way. And I don't remember what he responded. Maybe nothing. Maybe he said, "Eat your pea soup." And then we drove back to my childhood home, and I think next day, anyway, what happened, this thing didn't stop. I still had this feeling of being alive and being here, and it was very intimate feeling. I took a walk neighborhood, and I just felt so tremendous, like a connection to things, like trees. So I just had to hug them. But I first I looked around and I tried to see that no one is seeing. But then I very quickly went to tree by tree and I hugged them. And you know probably what I mean. When it feels alive, when like a plants, for example, plants, anything feels so much alive, it really means that it's live. It's strong connection. You're so happy to see tree because it's so there. It's so live, wonderful being. And then maybe it was that night, some family friends came to pay a visit, and they were old friends of our family, and so I was 19, so I was not that much participating, but I remember sitting there on the couch and listening to these people talking like some kind of everyday subject. But there was something, the way they spoke, maybe there was some kind of complaining or they were worried about something. And then I just said, for some strange reason out of blue, that I'm quite sure that I say that something like that. Here we are on this in the space. That there is this planet that where we are living, and actually there are no problems. That it's only we people. That I don't know if I say don't you see, not that way, but there was some kind of a naive explanation that this is just this huge space and why we are so much worried about little details. And maybe then I was asked to leave. No. Thank you for your participation in this conversation. And next speaker. And at some point they left. At some point was night. Yes, it was January 1987. And I went to my bed to go to sleep, the same bed that I used to be back in like 7 years before, when I still was asking this question, how it would be if nothing would ever happen, or if I would have not been born. And I was going to sleep, but for some reason I was so present, felt so present that this question, I just kind of voice in my head, or I was thinking, voice in my head told me, ask the question. And I, of course, knew immediately what was the question that I should ask. And I just started like, how would it feel if, and every word that I repeated or kind of was calling out silently in my mind kind of sank deeper, and it was like boom, boom, boom. And then when I reached the sentence, end of the sentence, it was it. It was just that I jumped up and I was at holy shit. No, I didn't say holy shit, but I was like, no way is it this. Because it was this. And I just knew that was the answer for my question. It was just this. And I was happy. I was, no, it's more than happy. It was strange. But also I then start to ask, like, same time some other questions came. For example, like, one, maybe I remember only three, but one was, what is death? No, I think it was, is there a death? Or what is death? Or just death? And immediately, no death. What about life? No life. Time, no time. It was just like this. I didn't think about anything, but it was just like, no, because it's impossible. If it's just this and it's. But so far so good. And it was very strong moment, of course. The whole world was quiet and just there. And I almost felt that I could sense through the walls, like environment and everything, and it was so quiet. And same time it was just there. And it really was like nothing has ever happened. Nothing has ever happened. Everything was just my imagination or something. But this is quite a big news for 19 years old, who wasn't really asking. I mean, I didn't order this kind of solution. It happened quite spontaneously, or anyway, I got a little bit worried about suddenly this not little voice, but I just started to use my everyday, common sense. Because here I was, and it was so obvious what was experiencing there. It was perfect. It was clearly perfect. But then this common sense asked that, but no one knows. There's nobody can tell that there is no death or there is no time or something. What do you think? How can you say that that it's just this? It's stupid. I mean, it's crazy. And then I got a little bit worried about that. Maybe I went crazy. Because I know now that there is no death, there is no time, it's just this. How can I know if I'm not crazy? I mean, nobody knows. How this guy suddenly in Vantaa can tell that that's the situation, people. So, no surprise that I was a little bit nervous suddenly, because this thing didn't disappear. It was just how it was. And then I thought, what can I do? Because I couldn't do anything. The situation was, as I said. But then I thought that I will go and wake my parents up and tell them this little news. What a good idea. But the problem was, of course, what can I say? What can I tell them? And since yesterday I told that we were a little bit a Christian, leaning to that direction family. And my parents definitely, they are. So for some clever idea was that I try to use some wordings from that context. And then I just went there and I hello. And then they woke up. And then I just have one thing just happened. Okay, I think it was Holy Spirit that touched me. Sorry, I'm disturbing your sleep, but it was just Holy Spirit that, I don't know, did you check doors? But anyhow, came in. And it was a moment of silence. And then my father said, "Go back to sleep." And I didn't say anything back, because, okay, now I had informed them. Done. I went back to my room, back to my bed, but I couldn't sleep. It was a little bit too exciting anyway. And so it was. I don't think I slept very much that night. Maybe not next night. Maybe 3 nights was a little bit like that. I don't know, probably I slept, but there was definitely some difficulties to sleep. And also this thing, this new vista was still there, and I kind of explored more details and like, for example, that books were so dead suddenly, then felt. It was a terrible moment to realize that I couldn't read. I could read and I could understand every word, and that was not the problem, but problem was that it wasn't interesting. It was so dead. It was so dead. I can't say more, but it was like totally dead. All books were so dead. And since I was 19, I started worried about how can I get an education if I can't read anymore. So how can I study? It was a big problem. And I remember sitting on my desk and having some books there and trying to like pretend that now I'm reading, and it just didn't make any sense. And I went out, and it was this new world there, but at the same time I really didn't like it. I much more wish to get back to this normal life before this stupid present moment. And and actually it kind of disappeared little by little. It took some few days, and it was more or less back to normal. But it came back now and then. There was those times that I could feel that now this time is stop. I'm not stopping, but this moment is coming more true. And I just wish that it would never come back and it would just disappear for good. Because I didn't have any idea what was going on. And it was a bit strange since, it's interesting that I read some books about Asia, some Eastern religions, and maybe some some of them described some kind of one, I don't know, but I couldn't see any connection to anything, and I don't know if I tried to even look for that direction. I didn't know what was it. And I think that was a little bit sad, that this framework was so totally missing there. I couldn't share this thing with anyone. I think I try actually to a couple of my friends to talk a little bit about it, but no success. And that was it. So I just left it, but as I told, things still happened. Like I had a quite often a very strong feeling of connection with the nature, for example. That was much more than ever before. It was really like a living thing, and some other little things, like things that never before had happened. And I went to army actually at that point. That was my time to go there, and I don't know why, but when we were at the shooting range, for some reason I was a second best shooter there, so I'm proud of that. But or best sometimes, but I was good. But what I did after I wasn't shooting, I was sitting in full lotus back in the other people were doing something and I was just sitting there for no reason. I don't know why I was doing that, but I was doing that. So I was meditating probably. And I don't know where this idea to meditate came, but I was a little bit a troublemaker in army also, because I wasn't that at that point I wasn't that interested in to follow. I just couldn't see this authority thing I couldn't take it very seriously, and then these officers, they had to sometimes ask me and talk to me that this is army and you should do like this. You should like stand like this, and you should knock the door like this, and you should put your hand like this when you come. And of course I tried sometimes, but I wasn't in purpose, I wasn't against, but it just didn't happen right. Because maybe this experience had changed some, because it wasn't that many months after I went to army. So, and there I actually started to do some meditation, because I was a medic, so I had it's a long story, we don't get there, but I had suddenly I was in an island, small island, and there was an ocean everywhere, and I just sat and did some meditation. So that was great in itself. So what are those warnings that I was telling that this story has? Not really warnings, but yes, what I have experienced afterwards, and of course I have met now a few people, like even before I became a teacher in Dokusan on Daisan, and talked with many people with different experiences and so. And one thing at least in my case, definitely the problem was that I didn't have any reference point. I didn't have any tools to understand or work with this, what has happened. So it just became afterwards, of course, I have imagined, what if there would have been, for example, Zen teacher around? That would have been amazing. That would have helped me so much. Because, of course, what happens in a situation like this, I start to make my own little story out of it. I don't remember having any particular story, but anyway, it becomes kind of thing that has a special meaning, because obviously those kind of things changes something. They will change your worldview, and maybe they will make you a bit proud or special, something different anyway. And they are maybe very little small details, but when there are many of those, and when years goes, they kind of get stuck around these experiences, and it becomes very repetitive, and you remember it again and again, and then was this, and like now I'm remembering it. So And I don't think that helps much. I think it's a big problem. And it became a little bit of a problem because I still couldn't share it with anyone. And I had a family suddenly. No, it's not suddenly, but it takes 9 months per child. So, but I studied, I became an artist, and I worked as an artist. But all the time there in the background there was this, time to time this question came back. I mean, what happened? What the heck was the thing that happened? And then one day actually I found an article. It was just accidentally. I found an article. It was 2000 probably 5. No. 95. It was Suomen Kuvalehti, and there was this quite long article about. It was England. In England, they have made this study, and it looked very serious article. I don't remember much of it, but the main thing was that they had. In England, they had, I don't know what situation today worldwide, but then they had given this kind of code, how you say it, like illness has this number, and there's some maybe letters and some numbers, so that they can identify just this specific thing for this syndrome or whatever disease. Tautiluokitus. And then they had discovered that, it was a big study, they had discovered that there is this strange thing that people have described when they come to psychiatric meetings, or patients, people worried about what's going on. And some of those things they could identify that special kind of religious experiences. And after many years of collecting these materials and from the different archives and so, they decided that it's very practical to give a number, like a tautiluokitus, for this kind of experience that they kind of made very specific. And then it was also mentioned it's not illness. So it's not any kind of problem, mental problem, but it's still there. And because doctors, time to time, they are facing some people coming and they are had this kind of experience. And some of those people who had experienced those kind of experience and meeting some kind of doctor, mental specialist doctor, and then they have decided that you are crazy. Together with the doctor, we decided, let's decide that you are a little bit crazy now. And then those people are very happy that now they know what is wrong. It wasn't a big deal. I was just crazy. I'm crazy. But because in reality it wasn't like that. They weren't crazy, but as we know, people are happy if they are labeled somehow. Then they don't need to worry about anymore. Not meaning now that we shouldn't do those things, but this was what I read from the magazine anyway, and it was quite interesting. And then I thought, maybe that was that. I don't know now what was the number of my experience, but anyway, and maybe it's only in England they are using it. So that was it, and so it was 17 years after this question got its answer. 17 long years later, I was finally ready to start practicing Zen. But it was already a few years before that I met people. I met some Buddhists and in Helsinki, different actually already in 90s. I went and I tried to find some. It was kind of, I was looking for, but I couldn't meet anyone really that I felt any connection. I just didn't feel that way, and that's it. And I bought incense sticks, and I sometimes used them, and it was this kind of. And then I walked this Helsinki Zen Center. I'd done that. I had seen it many times that there was this Bodhidharma's picture was hanging there, and so I know this is some Zen thing. I didn't know much about Zen, and it looked very like inviting. But then still I didn't trust that place, and I even called to them and I talked with someone and I wasn't convinced. And then I didn't go there. A few years later I went, but it took a few more years before I was really like quite depressed, not depressed, but desperate, and very ready to go to introduction. And so I try to stop this talk soon, so don't worry. But I have to say a couple of more things if we want to make this kind of nice ending. So I started to go to Zazen at Helsinki Zen Center, and I was very keen to meet Sante Sensei, then Sensei, now Roshi, which did happen quite soon after a couple of months, and my English was so poor at that time, but in Doksan, my first Doksan, it was a weekend retreat. After a couple of months I had started. I went to weekend retreats. And there I told him, in my poor English, what has happened 17 years before. But nevertheless, it was immediately this feeling of connection, and if he was bluffing, he did it very well. And there was this, it was so clear that he was clearly, it felt so clear that he is not this what I'm telling is no problem for him. He looked happy, and it was okay, and then he gave some couple of questions, and some things there was, and almost then and there I knew that this is the thing that I will do, and no question, and it was very strong. There is one more thing I really would like to tell, but I don't know, because it's not really nothing to do with this subject exactly, but it's something to do with the Helsinki Zen Center. But no, I won't tell it. Maybe next time. So, summa summarum, this was just only one example how somebody starts to practice. And that's one reason I hope this place and places like this could be existing, because there are people having different kind of experiences, and it's a big help if they can come and start doing Sasen and meeting people who've been doing these kind of things. They will save a lot of painful troubles and many years of just going around and telling stupid stories about experiences, and they have a chance to really start to do the work and deepen. Of course, that's the thing. We are so easily having those experiences, and then because we are alone and we don't have anyone to talk with, so we start to really think that this is it. Now I know everything about everything. Now I know what is this truth. And unfortunately, that's not so easy. So more practice is needed, and more practice to sort of destroy this previous castle that someone has built it up because of some experience. So it's a lot of also this kind of work to be done. So I think this was enough for this session. May all beings attain the Buddha way.